Good day, everyone. My name is Trina Scully, the Events Manager for the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber team and many of you are participating today from Saskatoon, which is situated in Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. As a Chamber, we are committed to growing a Saskatoon rooted in shared success, respectful relationships, and true reconciliation. If you are joining us from other parts of the province today, a warm welcome to you and thanks for being here. This is our Power Up event series, which features industry experts who can provide Chamber members with tips and tools to give their business a boost. Today's format is simple. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the chat and Jill will answer them for you. Our featured speaker today is Jill Sauter from Bench Strength Marketing. Jill focuses on helping organizations increase profitability and build strong brands through strategic sales and marketing. She is an avid community builder and supporter of small businesses. Jill has worked with B2B, B2C, and nonprofit organizations in many industries. She works to make her clients' marketing investments pay off in leads, sales, revenue, profit, positive reputations, and brand equity. Jill understands what it takes to help businesses scale and grow. Jill received her Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Saskatchewan and has volunteered with several business organizations to support small and medium-sized businesses, including Saskatchewan's Capital Network, Greater Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce, Sarita, and the Rajmanik Mentorship Program. She is also the founding member of the Saskatchewan Professional Marketing Association and Seeds for Dreams. It is my pleasure to welcome Jill Sauter. Jill, to you.
Welcome. Nice to see you today. I am very excited to take you on a wild ride this afternoon, I guess it is now. If you'll indulge me, I want to take us on a little bit of time travel here for a minute. Let's go back to 2007. Where were you 15 years ago? I dug back in some archives and found a little picture. And there's some fresh faces on here, and I noticed that some of them are on the call today, so welcome. This was me before kids. Today I had one of those moments where I was thinking, oh my goodness, what did I do with all my time before I had kids? And what made me think about it was I was thinking, what did businesses and business owners, business managers, and entrepreneurs think about before COVID? Like, it has occupied so much of our brain space lately. It's been just something that takes up every bit of brain power we have. But I also wanted to look back because 2007 was another time when we were looking at really tight job markets. And so I wanted to look at some statistics. Here are some unemployment rates from back in 2007. And you can see Saskatchewan was really at over full employment. Alberta was really, really suffering for trying to find people. And we were both lower than the Canadian average. Back in this time, there was lots going on for us from a business standpoint. But I found, when I was looking for the picture, I found this. This was a quote from President Blair's message in the Chamber newsletter. How can a province with such high health spending per capita, $2,681 per person in 2005, still have such a crisis in healthcare? A huge percentage of every dollar spent is coming out of our province's future revenue generating capacity. If somebody wants to write that number down, 2,681, because I found some other statistics I wanted to share with you. Now let's jump ahead to 2022 and what's going on here. Like I said, would we ever have thought we would be feeling relieved that someone phoned in and said that they were feeling sick and they weren't coming into work? We just had no idea. In 2021, just as a side note, our healthcare spending per capita is $5,330 per person. So some things have changed drastically, but we're still in a healthcare crisis, so that hasn't changed. Looking at the numbers, you can see that we're almost back to where we were in 2007. And if you were in a position where you were hiring people at that time, it was just brutal in 2007. And it's almost exactly the same thing right now, especially in skilled trades. But then every level of employment, from entry-level positions, part-time positions, service jobs, right up to professional positions. It's just a brutal labor market right now. And on top of that, we're dealing with a lot less certainty in our business as we look ahead. So it's just a crazy time right now. I wanted to set the stage a little bit to talk about salespeople and hiring a salesperson, because I think we have to have some perspective before we get into the meat and potatoes about how we can hire and keep great salespeople. What we're hearing in the marketplace is that there's some post-pandemic pent-up spending. And I know that's especially true for businesses who've been holding off on making investments in their businesses because they're waiting to see what happens with the pandemic. And there's been growth opportunities that have maybe stagnated. But I think that it's, people are starting to get some confidence back. They're starting to look more than 2 or 3 months into the future, and they really want to know they're starting to plan for that longer time horizon. The other thing is that companies need to increase revenue. We've had lots of costs associated with the pandemic, whether it's people not showing up for work or being sick, or effects in demand. We all need that boost in sales revenue. So my partner Carla and I, we work with businesses all the time, and this is kind of what we're seeing in the marketplace. We're seeing that businesses have been just completely occupied with HR concerns. And then on top of it, supply chain issues are challenging people in every sector. Talent in all levels, like I said before, is in high demand and low supply, but people are definitely ready to make some decisions and make some investments in their businesses. But to take advantages of those opportunities, are you ready? And that's what I'm here to talk about today. How can we prepare ourselves to be ready for taking advantage of those opportunities that the market provides to us when we're ready to jump at them? So let's look at how that's going to happen. This is a really basic equation. Everybody knows profit is your sales less your expenses. And in crisis times, when we're just trying to survive, lots of companies cut back on expenses because the sales aren't there, and that's the only thing that they can really control. And especially we're seeing in businesses that relied on that in-person connection, whether it was through salespeople, trade shows, that kind of thing, that it was a real hit on profitability because the sales just weren't coming. But then we also saw companies get creative in how they were finding sales and closing deals, and that made a big difference for some companies. But I think cutting back on expenses is not a long-term solution. It's definitely a short-term crisis solution, but long-term, you have to look at ways to increase sales. And for a lot of companies, when we're looking at finding increased sales, we're automatically saying we need somebody in charge of that. What we're seeing is that salespeople are becoming the unicorns of of business right now. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk about, again, to give you some context in what we see. And this has been going on for a long time in Saskatchewan, that salespeople are not easy to find. So one of the things that we have to look at is, where do great salespeople come from? And in markets like Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, there are lots of large companies, and they hire salespeople, train them up, and then maybe that salesperson hits a wall. They don't get a promotion. They don't see an opportunity. They don't like the company they're working with. And one of three things will happen. Either they'll fall in love with their current employer again, and they'll keep going. They may find a job with a competitor, or in some cases, they decide, I don't want to be in these big companies. I want to try something new. And they'll go to a small company. And in Saskatchewan, we don't have a lot of those large companies with big sales machines where they're hiring lots of salespeople, training them, and spinning them off into the marketplace where smaller companies can grab them. We just don't have that. The only exception, I would say, would be in agriculture, where we do have multinational grain companies, input companies that are training people, and there is that opportunity. The thing is, though, that the ag industry is just absorbing all those salespeople, and so they don't go outside the industry very often. There's lots of room for them to grow within the industry. And so if you're outside of that industry, good salespeople can be really hard to find. The other thing that puts Saskatchewan at a disadvantage is our gap. In lots of cases, larger companies will service the Saskatchewan marketplace out of Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg. And so they bring salespeople in, but they don't live here. And so they're not looking for new opportunities in Saskatchewan. They're looking for those opportunities where they're living right now. And that has been happening for years. And it's a problem finding salespeople in Saskatchewan, and it always has been. So that's sort of the context. Not only is it a tight labor market just for the number of people, but also we have supply issues, and salespeople just are not easy to find. So what are we seeing if we don't have good salespeople in organizations? We're seeing lots of owners who are, maybe when the business started, they were their best salespeople. They were passionate about the business, and they were the people who knew the industry and the products or services best. So, but now they're tired. They've been, managing so many other things outside of what business development, that they're exhausted. We also see companies that either rely heavily on one person in the organization to do some sales, or the sales and marketing roles are spread out among many people. And both ways, it's not working because those people are just overwhelmed with the work that they have. The other thing that we see is sometimes companies will hire a salesperson and it's just like a box that they have to check. I'm hiring a salesperson. That person starts, I check the box, I hand them a map and the keys and maybe a laptop, and I go back to doing what I do best. And that salesperson, it has high expectations, not a lot of support, not a lot of knowledge, and the expectations aren't going to be met on either side. And we see that happen a lot with salespeople being hired. And then we already talked about the low supply of salespeople. In the past, training has been fairly limited. There's some good trainers in Saskatchewan to train in sales, but the access to it has been limited. And now I would say that that's less of a barrier because we do online. You can get a degree online now, so it's becoming less and less an issue. So, but these other things are definitely barriers in companies to hiring and keeping great salespeople. I also want to talk about what makes a good salesperson, and I think that's really changed over the years. What we used to see was, we've seen them in the movies, those smooth talking, extroverted handshakers, deal makers. They were motivated by that big dollar sign. And that's not really what we're seeing now. Great salespeople know how to work processes and systems. They're really organized. They know how to spot an opportunity, and they can be a problem solver and figure out how to take advantage of that opportunity. They're not necessarily, everybody likes to be able to pay their bills, but I think that achievement has become a bigger motivator than just the dollar. So although you have to show up with a base amount of money that can encourage somebody to come to your company, there's opportunity. Those financial rewards are there more as a reward, not necessarily as a motivation to do the work. So that's a little bit different than it used to be. The other thing is that we're finding that different things make a better salesperson. And it used to be that we used to hire a salesperson because they came up from the, they started their first job in the mail room and they worked their way up, or they started on the loading docks and they worked their way up. That doesn't necessarily make a great salesperson today. What we're seeing is that people who understand the process of sales, regardless of the industry and their experience in it, they can be as successful or more successful than somebody whose entire career has been in the industry. The other thing is that when I started in sales years and years ago, different salespeople had their systems of how they like to work and how they would manage their territory or manage their client list. And that doesn't happen anymore. People want to come and use systems that they can work with. They need to know your sales history. They want to know customer information, and they want all of that information together. And they want to be able to use systems to help them manage and find the right opportunities in your customer list and in lead generation lists. So some really different approaches now than there used to be. So definitely looking at different things that make a successful salesperson. Sorry, just need a quick drink. So what can you do to set yourself up for success? I always say that marketers and salespeople are more like a dentist. A dentist hasn't necessarily seen your cavity, but they know how to fill cavities. And I think that that's the same with good salespeople, good marketers. They know the basics of how to do their job, but they don't necessarily know your business or your industry, but they can learn that. It's harder to find somebody with the sales skills than it is to find somebody with industry experience or somebody with some specific industry knowledge. Some things that companies can do to make sure that salespeople are successful, it provide that industry experience. Most companies, they have a ton of people in the business already who have industry experience. How are you capturing that? And whether it's a new salesperson or somebody new in, a production role or a service role, how do you disseminate that information that only a few people have, spread it out across the company? And that's definitely true for salespeople. Like I said, you can hire it's easier to hire the sales knowledge than it is to hire somebody with the industry knowledge. So be prepared to immerse them. Sales is a different role. And sometimes we see companies where people are maybe they don't understand that the salesperson has to leave the office, where they have to stay in the office all the time. So they think the salesperson is just slacking off or having a nap in their car. Understand for the whole organization to understand what that salesperson does and what their role is and what value they bring to the company, that can help that person fit in better and not be just such an outsider. The market knowledge that you have, where is your industry going? What are the forecasts? Who are the big players? Who's your competition? Having that information ready for a great salesperson to come into is really helpful. And it also helps you if you're taking that information out of the brains of the people who are there. It's a really a great exercise to do on a regular basis anyway, because you want that collective knowledge to stay in the company. Customer information, making sure that you have access to customer information and that you understand your customers and can articulate that to a salesperson, be able to teach somebody who your customers are and which ones are important and why they're important. Being able to research your customer base through whether you keep everybody's information on a spreadsheet or in some kind of customer relationship management software, just being able to have somebody come into a company and be able to access that information is really important. Sales and customer tracking software is great. Having that available to a salesperson when they come in, that's the kind of fuel that they need to get them started. They need that information and they love to dig into those numbers and see where they can make a difference, who maybe hasn't bought in a while or who are big customers that have maybe slacked off in the last while. Great salespeople will be looking for those opportunities. So the more you can get set up for that kind of information to be able to be available, that's really helpful. And then sales support tools, things like with one client, we were talking to them just about a shared calendar. Like, how do you share your calendars in your company? Can your person be able to book a time to meet with you in among all the other calls and visits that they're making with customers? They have to have that remote access, and some companies are starting to go that way because of COVID, but others haven't got that far yet. And tools like booking systems, calendar systems, how do you book your boardroom so that this person can set up a meeting with customers? How do you have tools that they can use to connect with customers remotely? Do you have the right kind of systems to showcase your products and services remotely or at a trade show? So those things are really important to think about before you bring a salesperson on, because they'll be looking for all of this stuff when they consider you as an employer. They'll look at it and say, okay, well, is this company set up for me, or do I have to come in and set all this stuff up myself? That it's so thinking about these things and preparing for them can really be a big bonus for a salesperson looking at your business as an opportunity. Big one, compensation. How do we pay salespeople? My first rule is always figure out what you can afford, because if you can't afford somebody and you start negotiating like the emotional negotiation on the house that is your dream house, sometimes we can spend more than what we have. So great to figure that out ahead of time. The other thing is a pay for performance kind of system, some kind of system that rewards the work that a salesperson does. If you haven't considered that as a company, figuring that out before you get into a situation where you're negotiating pay is important. I said here, sales positions should be the opportunity to be the highest paid employee in the company. That's a shocker to some companies. Lots of people will balk at that, especially if they like the fact that they're the highest paid administrator in the company or they're the president of the company. Your salespeople, if they're going to bring in revenue for you, you have to be able to compensate them and get dangling a carrot in front of them that says that you can really make a difference here, and you can your work, it will be rewarded. That's something that potential salespeople will really look for. And there's also some preparation that has to go on within the company as well, because not everybody will be as accepting of this as what you might think. So something to consider before you post that job posting. I think I've talked about this, except for the onboarding and training. I was with one company and they didn't have a training program for salespeople. And what we did was we created a sales training program where people started. It was a manufacturing company, so we started with spending a day with the manufacturing team, with the service team, with admin who are taking orders and understanding that order process, how that flows. The customer service team who are dealing with after sale challenges that the customers might have. And then even so far as spending a day with a valued customer, if you're a company that you only have a few really big customers, you might want to consider that as part of the onboarding, so that they can get to know what happens in a customer's business and how your product or service fits into their business and solves a problem for them. It can be a real eye-opener. It can also help develop that relationship between the customer and this new salesperson. So creating a training program that's really detailed is important. I was at a training session one time with Disney. If you ever get a chance to take Disney training, go for it. But they were saying that they always get asked, there's lots of parks around the Disney parks. Disney does a ton of training with their people, and they'll sometimes leave. And so somebody asked the Disney person, what happens if you are training people, putting a lot of investment in training, and these people leave? And the Disney person said, we don't look at it that way. We look at it the other way. What if we don't invest any time in training this person and they stay? What is the effect on our business? And that's always stuck with me. I thought it was really important to consider that. And especially with salespeople, the beginning of their tenure with you is a really critical time. They're not as busy. So that's the time for training. And it can be anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, but you won't regret that time that you spend connecting them with people in your organization or even outside the organization. So yeah, we've talked about some of these other things. So where do you look for great salespeople? There are lots of places to look that are common, right? Those job boards, finding a recruiter, those can be really helpful. But when you're in a tight job market like we are, or a tight labor market, it can be very difficult. So you almost have to look everywhere. And remember, I said that a great salesperson isn't necessarily somebody who knows your industry. Maybe it's somebody a great way with customers, or they've got some knowledge of how to look for an opportunity. And that can be anywhere. Like my husband used to hand out his business card when he was looking for salespeople at restaurants. When somebody would say, they would offer great customer service, but they'd also look for those opportunities to sell something else. And that might be a great person to bring into your organization. The attitude that people have, they have to be willing to try something and have it not work and be okay with that. And that can be really important. When you're looking at hiring, look for that attitude. Look for that person who's positive and optimist, always looking for the next opportunity. When you find, if you have the opportunity to weigh out candidates, you might have been looking for somebody with lots of experience, but sometimes people with potential are a great fit as well, especially if you've got room to let them grow. So something to consider. The other thing is, before you look, understanding what will fit into your organization. Who do you look for? What characteristics do they have? For employees, right from those entry-level positions up to your management positions, what does that fit look like? Oh, got a question in the chat. Oh, no. All right. So yeah, just think about who's going to fit into your organization, because sales, if you've got one salesperson, that can be a lonely position because they don't have a peer group. So they have to be able to connect with the rest of your team as well. So make sure that you're hiring somebody that there is a good fit there. When you're writing that job description, here's a few things to think about. Understanding your corporate objectives. What do your forecasts look like? Is this person coming in to maintain relationships with good customers and just keep that relationship going? Or are you expecting somebody to double, triple, quadruple your sales? That makes a difference as to who you hire. And that person has to know that up front. Talk about what you have to offer. Do you have a great training program? Do you have lots of opportunity for them? Do you have systems in place that can help them be a great salesperson? Let them know how much growth opportunity there is. And the other thing that lots of salespeople are looking for is impact as well. Like when I was in sales, I was having a bad day and I, was driving down the road and I just thought, somebody's selling tires, somebody's selling car parts. It's not the most exciting or impactful thing. They're not changing the world. But when somebody needs good tires, maybe you're changing their world. And so I think that impact, it means something to people. So even though you might not be, stopping climate change or discovering the next great vaccine, you're making an impact in your community, and being able to articulate that is important because salespeople want to know that they're contributing to something. Every employee wants to know that they're contributing to something. And before you start that role, understand what that compensation system looks like, because that will be a very prominent question that you'll get when people are looking at that. And especially seasoned salespeople, they will definitely want to know what that compensation package looks like. And you can't be wishy-washy on that. You've got to be firm and understand what it is you're offering and what the opportunity is that you're providing for people. One thing that I suggest when hiring a salesperson is to test them in some way, because salespeople are great at their jobs. So they might sell themselves really well, right? So you want to get past that initial sales of their skills and their personality and find out what they can actually do. And, because you can't sort of hire them on a trial basis, you need to understand how they can do the elements of their job, and things like connecting with a customer, having somebody that's a great customer that you have a really good relationship with, interview a potential salesperson. That's amazing. If you can get that outside perspective, that would be fantastic. But beyond that, you can Google salesperson tests online, and I'm sure you'll find some things, but can they write a good email? Can they solve problems? Can they prioritize when their to-do list has, too many tasks? Can they prioritize and figure out which are the most important things? And asking them to do some of these things during that interview process can really help you evaluate whether or not this person is really able to walk the talk. Once you find somebody, got to keep them because they're hard to find. So make sure that you've got that process of onboarding and training them set. Make sure they know what to expect, and also have an opportunity for them to be able to learn more in the future. And sometimes that doesn't have to be, a $5,000 course. Maybe it's attending trade shows in your industry. Maybe it's, becoming part of an industry organization and granting them the time to be on a board or a committee that can help them connect with people in the industry. If you're hiring someone, anyone in your business, they have to have some management, right? You have to be able to hold them accountable for what they say they're going to do, and did they do it, and how well did they do it? So setting performance goals, measuring those, keeping them accountable, and then if they're not hitting those goals, how will you change that performance? And that management has to fall on somebody. Maybe you don't have a sales manager, but somebody else has to be responsible for that salesperson and hold them accountable. And that should be decided before you think about hiring someone. And they should feel comfortable managing the clerical staff or the accounting staff is very different from managing a salesperson. And so the person that's taking on that sales management role, in addition to their other work, has to know how that's different and what they need to do to be able to manage that person. And the other thing is, like I said, it can be lonely to be a sole salesperson in an organization. So before you hire them, and as they're becoming part of your company, make sure that you have opportunities for them to connect with other people in the organization so that they can feel like they're part of a team. Putting them in cross-functional teams, helping them to understand different areas of the business, involving them in decision-making in certain areas. That can really be helpful long-term in retaining them and helping them to become part of your company. This is just sort of a checklist for you, those sales systems that I mentioned before, being able to track your sales, customer information, for salespeople, understanding where they sit on their compensation. Like, you can't just once a year tell them, well, you got your bonus or you didn't. They need to know along the way on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis, depending on your sales cycle. They need to know where they sit, and they'll manage their performance accordingly, but you have to be able to help them know where they sit. Lead generation is another one. If you only have one salesperson and it was a hard-fought battle to find that person, you want them using their time to your best advantage. So make sure that you've got some systems in place to develop leads. With the internet now, websites, social media, you can be generating leads before you bring in your salesperson to close that deal. So set those systems up ahead of time, understand how that works and what you need to do. That's all part of your marketing that can support sales. But it's one way to make sure that your salesperson is really using their time to the best purpose and the best return on your investment. The other thing is that your brand should be strongly established. You hire a salesperson. Salespeople like to know that the products or services that they're selling are saleable, that people want them. And part of your brand development is making sure that your people are aware of your products, your company, and that you're known in the industry, that you have a positive reputation. Salespeople will be attracted to that, and that will help them be better salespeople if they don't have to tell your story from scratch every time they have a conversation. So they'll be looking for that when they're looking for a new opportunity. So what happens if you can't find a salesperson? There's basically two things you can do. You can keep looking, and like my husband, start giving out business cards whenever you see somebody who's a problem solver and a great optimist and has a great way with customers, and work on building those tools in the background so that your business can be set up for a salesperson to be successful. The other thing that you can do is identify some talent in your own business that could be sales potential. If you've got somebody who's got some interest in working with customers or has some experience. I was a mentor for the Edwards School of Business, and you know what, they don't have a sales program at Edwards, and I'm sure there's a few people on this call who can we can have a long discussion about that. But there are a few people, like one person that I mentored, she was selling knives door to door, and that's a hard job. But she got a lot of skills from that. And yes, it's not a nationally known company, and it wasn't this 2-year sales program, but it was the school of hard knocks. And if you've got somebody who's had any kind of a sales role, whether it was in retail or a restaurant, those are people with some skills. And if they're interested in that and show an affinity, maybe it's an opportunity to train them or give them some exposure in a different position. Get them thinking about customers in a different way, and maybe they can be your next star salesperson. But you have to identify them early and make sure that you give them the opportunities in the future, that they can sort of see their career path into something like that and be looking forward to that. All right. Any questions from anyone? You can just unmute yourself and ask a question. Ooh, we got one in the chat, maybe. well, it's contracting salesperson function rather than, contracting a salesperson. Well, lots of the manufacturers in Saskatchewan have what we call manufacturers reps, and they will take a manufacturer's product as part of their portfolio. And that can be a really successful way to find salespeople instead of hiring them yourself. So definitely some pros there, because they're already knocking on the door of that customer. The problem with it is that your product becomes part of a portfolio of products. So you don't necessarily have control over how that customer, the priority that they put on your products in their portfolio. You also don't have control over their complete relationship with the customer. So it's hard to influence that. I know in some industries, or some manufacturers have done a lot of training. They do lots of marketing support. They have a really good connection with those dealers or those manufacturers reps. So that relationship and the value that the sales representative gets from the company, that can help put your product higher in their conversation priority with a customer. I'm working with a client right now, and we're looking for dealers for them. And dealers are kind of looking for the same things that salespeople are. They're looking for products with a good brand name and a reputation. They're looking for that they can make money selling this product. And they're looking for something that's easy to sell, or something new and innovative that they can go in and talk to customers. That's something, a new conversation or a new reason to talk to a customer. So it's not, you give up a bit of control, but it's also easier to find people who are out there knocking on that door anyway. I would suggest that you still have to do some of that preparation so that you can track their sales and you can compensate them appropriately, that you can support them in their sales calls with customers. I know some manufacturers from Saskatchewan, they'll go to trade shows with their dealers, or they maybe have a co-op marketing program available to help them with marketing to their those dealer reps to market to their customers. Some of them will do training programs with their dealer reps. So lots of, there's pros and cons for sure. Some industries, they just have a lot more experience in that, like agricultural machinery. There's a lot more dealer reps or manufacturers reps. The oil field, the energy sector, lots of people had those kinds of businesses to sell to oil field. Thanks, Jason. Great question.
There's
Any
another
other
question from Monica in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, Monica. Oh, great. Hi, Monica. Small company with. Yeah. Distributing the load. It holds companies back from expanding. What can owners do to prepare their clients for transition? A lot of that has to do with the owner. It's nice to control that relationship with the customers. And lots of owners feel that that's their only opportunity, like that's their control. They don't want anybody to take that on, but at some point somebody has to, because presumably your business is growing. So like I said, getting that knowledge out of one person's head and into some kind of management systems, that can help. Being able to report on sales, that can help as well, being able to share that information. A lot of it is that information flow, and one step is for the owner to know that this has to happen and for them to start actively figuring out how to get all of their market and customer knowledge out of their own brains and be able to transfer it to someone else. It's hard though, because it's like sending your kids off to school. Somebody else is taking over that relationship, and it's hard to give that up. So definitely there has to be a concerted decision, a focused decision from the owner that that's the direction they want to go. And then they have to start getting that information out of their heads and into systems or depositories that can other people can have. I don't know if that answered your question, Monica.
Yeah, that's good. The only thing I would add to that is sometimes the customers aren't prepared for a salesperson when they've had a relationship with the owner. So that would be, I guess, that's sort of that customer piece you don't want to lose.
Right.
So how does the owner prepare the customers for a new face?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is trust, right? So how do we build trust? And it's in the small things, right? And I see Tanis wrote in here that one of the local companies, Northridge, they often had their salespeople shadow the owner. And that's a really great way to start not only helping the salesperson understand the customers, but also understand the way that trust has been built with those customers over time. And I think that's really important to understand for a new person in the company to understand the culture, but also that culture extends, or that brand extends to their relationship with the customer. And thanks, Tanis, for that example. Being able to shadow that person and build that trust with the customers can really help. All right. Another question: has COVID insecurity made salespeople looking for higher base versus commissions? I would say that just in general, like when I started out in sales a long time ago, there was a couple of times where I was on full commission, but it was even starting to be rare at that time. I would say that full commission is almost not, it's not table stakes anymore. You have to come to the table with some kind of a guarantee. And then the bonus is, again, it's not a bonus for, it's not an incentive to sell, it's a reward for activity. And I think there's a difference there. Does the general state of the economy shape people's needs and expectations on salary? Yeah, I think it does. Like some people say that the millennials don't want to, aren't motivated by money, but that's not true. People are always motivated by money, and we all like our lifestyles and we want to maintain it. So yeah, I think there's some pinch for sure. We've heard those numbers from across Canada, but I think that salespeople are definitely looking for some kind of baseline especially to get them started. Sometimes that compensation package can skew more towards a performance-based compensation after a term of, probably at least a year, probably two, depending on your sales cycle. Like if you can see a customer and make a sale a week later, that's very different than if you have a 2-year sales cycle. It's hard for a salesperson to get traction in 6 months if you have a 2-year sales cycle. What's the best way to put a sales team together? Young people with potential or a team of experienced? That's a great question. In my experience, having a team with both seasoned professionals and young people where there's no animosity between the two. Like if people aren't at loggerheads, or like if they're not competing head to head and they feel like they can learn from each other, to me, that's the best opportunity, because some of those seasoned people can bring lots of great customer service experience and industry experience that the young people maybe can't bring. Whereas the young people, maybe they bring, better systems, better, more enthusiasm for the opportunities, and just a fresh set of eyes. So to me, a mixture is way better. But then there again, back to that management piece, you have to have somebody who's managing that team to say, we're not competing against each other and we're not fighting over the same bone. We're trying to make the pie bigger for everyone, and we can learn from each other, and being able to manage that conversation is helpful. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute. There's lots of people that I haven't seen here. We put together a little checklist, and Trina's going to put this in the chat for us. But this is a checklist of some processes and tools and things that you can think about to help you prepare your organization to be ready for salespeople. Lots of technical terms here, and if you have questions, please feel free to contact my partner. Carla is on the call here. Just a little plug for us. We're a B2B marketing consulting partnership, and we help businesses that are struggling to create a marketing function or manage a marketing function in their B2B business.